and requested to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation from her company. Meat processing is a dangerous job in America. Workers are 3 times more likely to get seriously injured than the average American worker, more likely to get seriously injured than people who work in oil and gas drilling, industrial building construction, or people who operate sawmills. And that was before the COVID pandemic tore through meat plants. Meat processing has a long history of safety issues. Using a sharp tool quickly and close to other people is dangerous, but some of the harm is avoidable because today workers are without some basic protections necessary to keep them safe. So why has the US failed to protect the people who process our meat? This is why the poultry industry has more reports of finger amputations than any other industry, and why the meat processing industry as a whole averages 2 amputations a week. Chemical accidents like ammonia and chlorine gas leaks injure hundreds of workers a year, and they frequently make workers sick.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me here, Lavender. Let's just jump straight into this political topic. We're gonna do the pure evil, the CarGill files, the company. He who feeds you controls you. Deep dive into this topic. So what is CarGill, the company? So what does the company do exactly? They process beef, poultry, value-added meats, and egg products to food marketers, food service companies, and food realtors. They have significant operations in the US, Canada, Central America, China, and Southeast Asia, and the UK, basically controlling the whole food supply. When it comes to explaining the impact of America's second biggest private company on your life, no one puts it better than the pro-capitalism company itself. "We are the flour in your bread," says one of CarGill's corporate brochures. "The wheat in your noodles, the salt in your fries. We are the corn in your tortillas, the chocolate in your dessert that's made by slave, labor, the sweetener in your soft drink. We are the oil in your salad dressing and the beef, pork, or chicken that you eat for dinner on your plate. We are the cotton in your clothing, the backing on your carpet, and the fertilizer in your field." A spokeswoman for CarGill said CarGill is committed to nourishing the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. "This is just a pure manipulation tactic and pro-capitalism, greedy gluttony corporation. Capitalism doesn't care about keeping the world safe or sustainable. Capitalism is not a sustainable system." So on to the history of CarGill. In its 155 years, CarGill has transformed into this multi-billion-dollar business via capitalism exploitation. It has made its owners into billionaire capitalist pigs and workers into wage slaves. The family is worth a total of $40 billion. William Wallace CarGill founded CarGill in 1865. He saw the potential for capitalism profits by acting as a middleman between farmers and customers. As the company grew, CarGill was often the only grain elevator at the major railroad stations, leaving farmers little choice but to accept its prices, which had been sometimes fixed for backroom deals. Such questionable ethics helped CarGill increase in reach and sale. By the turn of the century, the company handled coal, flour, feed, lumber, and seeds. It had invested in railroads, land owning, water irrigation, and farms and farming. The company faced its first major scandal during the First World War when it was accused of wartime profiteering in the late 1930s when drought and over-plowing transformed the Great Prairies into the Dust Bowl. CarGill was suspended from the Chicago Board of Trade for buying up corn, alleging to corner the market. Yet still the company grew at a bewildering speed, boosting a lucrative government contracts during the Second World War. CarGill's U.S. grain exports increased 400% between 1955 and 1965, with annual sales rising to $2 billion. As it accumulated capital, the company began the MO of discreet but ruthless expansion that would come to be defined by. So as we all know, capitalism puts profits over lives, that of animals, the planet Earth herself, and people as a whole. One of the controversies, they are literally destroying Mother Earth herself via deforestation, climate change, the climate change crisis, pollution, etc. Animal agriculture, etc. Remember, remember that green capitalism doesn't actually work whatsoever. So CarGill, are trying to manipulate the masses in public with its spouts of pro-capitalism, green capitalism BS. The capitalism giant has attempted to satiate its customers' demand for environmental reform with a new deceptive report, CarGill's 2020 Soy Progress Report Mid-Year Update. However, an analysis by Mighty Earth Mapping and supply chain experts has found that CarGill accounting methods are both grossly inaccurate and intentionally misleading. CarGill claims that 95% of its soy volumes qualify, but uses data too vague and too generic to actually contribute to the report. Independent reports from organizations like TRAZA have found that CarGill to have the second highest deforestation risk in Brazil out of all the soy exporters. CarGill cannot claim that any of their soy is deforestation free, sweeping other important issues under the rug. CarGill also did not report on other impacts of its deforestation, including illegal clearance on indigenous lands and community lands as a whole, or the use of fires, but the company is known to have impacts in all three of these areas. Ignoring these issues is nothing to, migrate the destruction and deforestation. We all know that these mega billion-dollar capitalism and exploitation companies do not care about indigenous people or workers' rights. Take one good look at the Standing Rock pipeline oil protests and what the police watchdogs did to them. CarGill sourced some of the soy products like chicken feed and pet food to land where indigenous communities have suffered violence and displacement, according to a new report from Earthsight, the organization investigating environmental social injustices. The company have ties to a soy farm of the state of Mato Grosso do Sul that operates on the ancestral land of the Gardi Kauai, an indigenous group that spent the last several decades fighting forced eviction. Indigenous peoples have also experienced sharp increases in cancer in those areas, birth defects, miscarriages, and other illnesses linked to pesticides and herbicides used to grow soy, often sprayed by planes directly overhead. Violence and deforestation on indigenous land have increased since President Jair Bolsonaro took office at the start of 2019. His government has largely prioritized agricultural and capitalism profits and industries over the rights of indigenous people and people that live in the country as a whole. CarGill is poised to further wreak havoc on fragile ecosystems in Brazil, taking advantage of the president's rollback on vital environmental protections. We all know that factory farming is truly bad, and animal abuse and human rights abuses run rampant. CarGill is also the world's top 3 meat packers, a practice where missteps can be fatal. In 2007, people died, 29 were sickened, and 3 women had stillbirth or miscarriages linked to a listeria outbreak in sliced turkey from a CarGill processing plant in Texas. The same year, a 3-year-old girl died. 140 others became ill after eating E. coli tainted contaminated meat supplied by CarGill meat packaging plant that a number of previous citations for fecal contamination. A salmonella outbreak across 37 states in 2011 resulted in another death linked to CarGill processed meat. In 2009, the New York Times found that CarGill supplied hamburgers contaminated with E. coli and had been made from a mismatch of cheap scraps more likely to have contact with feces, some in which have been doused in ammonia to kill bacteria. The process saved CarGill 25% in cost, but left one consumer paralyzed from the waist down. These are the victims of capitalism, profits over lives, as usual. The industrialized meat industry in the U.S. is more prone to outbreak, largely because livestock densities are higher, human rights and animal abuses are running rampant, low pay wage slaves and working violation conditions, and hygiene standards lower because profits over everything is the thing with capitalism system. Antibiotics are used liberally and not just to treat unwell livestock, but to stop infections developing as well. Using antibiotics in food production enables bacteria to develop resistance scientifically, meaning the drugs will be less effective in humans. Antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest public global health threats, estimated to kill up to 700,000 people a year. CarGill has also violated various U.S. environmental laws in recent years. Notorious waste from their hog farms and fertilizer plants has been spilled into freshwater creeks and streams, contaminating already, extremely, rare, because, freshwater is an endangered resource, including the Missouri and Illinois and the bays from San Francisco to Tampa, killing countless of fish and polluting up wildlife, refuges, wetlands, and reserves. It looked like ink, the water did, a farmer said of a 2012 hog waste spill in Illinois. There were fish all over the place dead. It wasn't fit for nothing. Not even a wild animal could drink out of it. Air pollution has also been an issue. In 2005, the company reached a settlement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, following a complaint alleging that it had significantly underestimated its emissions of carbon monoxide and pollutants at oilseed processing plants in 13 states. 10 years later, CarGill agreed to settle with the EPA over alleged Clean Air Act violations, this time for allegedly failing to meet regulations governing pharmaceutical emission standards at its vitamin E manufacturing facility in Iowa. In both cases, the company made no admission of liability and took no responsibility as a whole. When it comes to the company's human rights and worker violations, in 1984, CarGill agreed to pay $1.2 million to settle a class action lawsuit concerning race and sex discrimination in its employment practices. In 2011, the U.S. Labor Department Office of Federal Contact Compliance Programs filed a complaint after CarGill charging it with systematic gender and racial discrimination in hiring for entry-level production jobs at its meat packing plant in Springdale, Arkansas. The U.S. Supreme Court is scheduled to hear a case that's already happened, first filed in 2005, alleging that CarGill was two major companies along with Nestle, to have aided and embedded in child slavery in West Africa. 6 coca farm workers alleged that they were trafficked as children in a human trafficking ring in the 1990s from Mali to Ivory Coast, where they were forced to work unpaid on plantations, and they only got food. They didn't get paid for anything that they did, and severely physically abused by guards of this plantation. CarGill is defending the claim against it, and overall the Supreme Court took the capitalist pig side because the whole court system, from the courts to the police, only served the rich and elite. No lives matter under capitalism unless you are part of the elite, apparently. CarGill has also been linked to slave-like labor conditions in Brazil coca plantations as well. Again, when it comes to meat workers at factory farms, these workers have some of the highest rates of occupational injury and illnesses in the United States. The labor of environment is full of potentially life-threatening dangers, whether that is bacteria, E. coli, salmonella, etc. Moving machine parts can cause traumatic injuries by crushing, amputating, burning, and slicing. The tools of the trade knives, hooks, and scissors and saws, among others, can cut, stab, and infect, the workers. And the trauma of repeating the same force of motion 10 to 1,000 times each day can cause severe and disabling injuries such as arthritis, where they have to have their fingers amputated and stuff like that.